Greetings everyone, welcome to ChessAdvancedd. This game was played in MTX Chess from the FIDE Open. Hey, Pragg is not playing in the lead section, he's playing in the FIDE Open, and he's facing off against an American Grandmaster. He's Chasin, and this is going to be an epic matchup. So without further ado, let's start with this game. Hey, Pragg starts with, well, Nico starts with d4 and Pragg goes for knight to f6, and we have c4, e6 and just knight to c3. We go into the East Indian defense, and here just bishop to b4. Pragg chooses to go for this Nibzo Indian defense and queen to c2 in this position, and you can go for a very nice line in these lines which starts with d5. And if let's say you try to go for a3 in this position, just pushing the bishop back, bishop captures, and just going for this queen captures, then you have even c5. If d caps on c5, d4, and if queen to g3, if someone employs against this, just go for the pawn in this position, you just go for this knight to c6. You don't bother about it. And if they decide to go for this queen caps on g7, just play rook to g8, and your development would be far superior. Here queen to h6, then just go for e5, and your structure is absolutely amazing. And if you try b4 in this position, then just comes this rook to g6, and you're doing very well, believe me. The king can remain in the center. Your development far triumphs everything else. And look at this, and just look at your pieces, and this is going to be absolutely amazing, and most likely, or more likely than not, you're going to win this game. So if anyone want to try that, you can do that. Here just comes this knight to c6, but here knight to f3 was played. Now just comes d6 is the main classical Nibzo setup, basically a bishop to d2, and now just comes castles in this position. e3 was played, just asking what are you doing with that bishop. Are you maybe preparing to somewhere along the line, if you had gone for a move like d5, you would want to bring it back. But now Pragg is forced to trade with bishop captures, and just queen to e7 in this position. Here e3 was played, but now comes even e5, challenging the center. D captures, and here we have bishop d3. And obviously you cannot go for a move like e4 in this position, because bishop captures, queen captures, and then you lose the pawn. So you don't want to make that mistake here. So what you want to do in this position is actually go for this bishop to g4, and then you want to threaten to actually open up g file. But is that good for you? Is that bad for you? Because white can already castle queenside, and if you give him an open g file, well, good luck to you. Your position is absolutely going to crumble. So here after knight to g5, let's say you try to go for that, you go for this knight to d4. Knight to d4 is an absolutely amazing move. You cannot go for this e captures, by the way, for all of you wondering, because after e caps on d4, it comes with a discovery towards the king, and your bishop is going to fall as well. So obviously you cannot do that. But here after bishop caps on d4, I was just wondering that after this e caps on d4, and let's say you try to go for a move like h3 in this position to attack the bishop, because the bishop needs to move, can you here go for this d caps on e3? That was the first question in my head, but unfortunately you cannot. If you try to go for this d caps on e3, then your position would crumble, because now you have a spectacular move in this position. If you want to find that out on your own, I'll just let you pause the video. But here the move is actually bishop caps on h7, and what a beautiful move that is, because here after king to h8, just h caps on g4, and the rook is now occupying this entire file, and this was the trouble with bishop being there. And if e caps on f2, now king to f1, and the king is out of trouble, and your king on the other hand is about to, well, very decently fall. So what you want to do in this position after h3 is not play games here. Just go for the bishop to d7, play a passive move, it's absolutely fine. And if queenside castle in this position, you just go for h6, pushing the bishop back. Here you can try to go for this knight to h7, and after this knight captures, bishop captures in this position, now you go for king. Now you go for this king to h8, and here queen to e4, asking for a trade, but you don't trade. You go for queen to e6. You say you want to trade, you just trade in my terms, I'll attack the pawn, and I'll most likely take it. So here queen captures, bishop captures, but now just comes this bishop to e4, d caps on e3, and here after bishop caps on b7, just rook a to b8, and the game goes on with both players having roughly equal chances. I still like black's position a lot better than I like white's. But here after bishop to d3, rook to e8 was played by Pragg, not going for all of this madness with bishop to g4, but something to remember in these Nibzo Indian setups. A knight to d2 was played, but now just comes even e4, pushing the bishop back, and where is that bishop moving? A bishop to e2 was played, keeping the options open towards the king side or towards the queen side, whatever you want to play in this position. A bishop to f5 was played, and now you need to be careful. I mean, here in this position, g4 was played, and g4 is a really horrible mistake in this position, because what the hell are you even doing? You're supposed to just castle in this position, and after knight to g4, just go for this h3, and after knight goes to e5, now you go for the straights with knight captures, knight to d7, and after f3, just preparing against everything, you just go for the pinned piece, right? pin is exceeding, and now after this rook a to d1, you have to give up the pawn. Knight captures, f captures, bishop captures, basically recapturing. And the thing is that you're gonna be left with a backwards pawn, but still this position is absolutely fine. You can hold this to a draw even against Pragg. But the trouble is g4 is not at all a good move. You're giving me a pawn for free, and definitely not something you want to do. So Pragg is like, well, show me where the money is. Knight captures on g4, and here rook to g1 was played, trying to go for some sort of an attack. But the trouble is that e4 pawn is a nuisance. If the bishop was here and that e4 pawn was not there, I would say that maybe you have some chances for an attack, but now you don't. And here after this queen to h4, then just a queenside castle was played. So now how are you planning to actually go for that attack? And your position is crumbling by the second. Hey, knight g to e5 was played by Pragg, and your pieces are not at all coordinated. I mean, you're going to take at least 2 or 3 tempos to be able to try and do anything, maybe even, just tackle the problem of the e4 pawn. But it's just very difficult because the queen would be hanging as well. So you need to be careful here. Rook to g3 was played, but now just comes this bishop g6, moving the piece back, and now ideas like that are not going to be working. A rook d to g1 was played, still trying to go for that attack and justifying your sacrificing of that g4 pawn, but there is no justification. That was an absolute blunder here. Rook a to d8 was played, but now in this position you're supposed to, well, try to create some chances for yourself, and you don't have that much chances. I mean, how are you doing anything in this position? Maybe with a move like b4 you can try to do something, but with b4 the trouble is, hey, knight to d3 check, and you're gonna have to go for this bishop captures. Then just comes this rook captures, and that rook is on the face of the queen. I mean, that's disrespect right there. Here knight to b3, and now just comes even b6, and here f4 if you try to go for, then just comes even knight to e7, and the ideas like this are in the air. If you go for this king to b2, then just comes this, and I mean, your position is already really bad. You're gonna have to sacrifice the exchange. This is completely over. And if you go back, then the position is so passive that I can just pick up the pawn, and I will be completely winning. I mean, you've just given me 2 pawns for absolutely nothing. You have no counterplay. Your pieces are passive. Good luck defending this position against Pragg. But here after rook a to d8, queen to b3 was played, and now Pragg goes for a move which he was absolutely not supposed to. I mean, both players just playing awesome chess, and suddenly they just throw out a move like, it's it's like, they think that they are Tal. They'll just go for a move, and that would be the insane sacrifice of the day. But you're supposed to go for this b6 here and not, sacrifice the pawn. But Pragg, for some reason, goes for this knight to f3, and knight to f3 just completely takes away all the advantage from the position, and this is not good. Here bishop captures, and e captures was played, but now just comes this queen caps on b7. Here he takes the pawn, and now Pragg is still better, a little bit better, but he was a lot better and almost even winning. But now Pragg is gonna have to find the optimum moves in this position to be able to have that advantage and claim that advantage. With that in mind, he goes for this rook captures on d2. What a beautiful move, and that was the only move to keep the advantage. And here in this position, queen caps on c6 was played, but now comes this rook to c2 check, and now obviously you don't want to go here, so here you have to go under the mask of the bishop. And here in this position, what are you supposed to even play here? Maybe with a move like rook to d8, yeah, your position is absolutely amazing. Let's say you can also go for this rook to b1, but rook to b1 was the move that Pragg played, so I'll just show you this line. If you try to go for this, then just comes king to a1, and here you have this rook captures on c3. If you go for this b caps on c3, you must be thinking that I'm out of my mind. What am I doing? I mean, I've just sacrificed the rook and for the bishop, which was not even maybe doing anything, and now I have just a bishop and just a rook and a queen which is almost out of the game. How am I going to attack? Well, bear with me, you are going to attack, because now you have queen to e7, and now you understand the idea, because that bishop is covering this. Queen captures, if you allow, you're just getting checkmated. So here's c5, trying to close up the lines, but how many lines are you going to close with the pawns? Here queen to e5, and now that is also an idea. Here queen to b7 was, maybe if you try to go for, then just comes even h6, just making some breathing room for the king, and the attack can wait because the bishop is already a bit too strong. Here queen to b2, then just comes even queen caps on c5. Now the rook is jumping in. There would be attack towards here as well. Rook caps on f3, finally grabbing the pawn, but now just comes rook to d3, and if rook to c1 in this position, just keeping an eye on the pawn, then just comes even rook to d2. You cannot move away from capturing that, because hey, this captures would be checkmate. Because if you do capture this, then the trouble for you is, yes, you can defend with the queen. I know some of you must be thinking of that, but hey, the rook is hanging. That's the problem, and you have no squares. You're gonna have to defend with the queen, and this is gonna be checkmate. So that's the problem. So here after rook to d2, now you're gonna have to mostly go for a move like queen to b3, just moving away, but then your position would crumble, because here king to h7, if you try h4, then just comes even a5. If rook to f4, not allowing the queen to be able to move with a move like that. Hey, queen to e5, and after this a4, now you just go for even c5. So ideas like this are in the air as well. Your position is somewhere along the line is going to crumble. But after king to b1, rook to b8 was played by Pragg, not going for this rook d8 madness, but here king to a1, but now comes the idea. Rook captures on c3 and Pragg sees everything very decently. B captures and Pragg goes for queen to e7, and now you're in a load of trouble because in that line the rook was here, but now the rook is covering this as well. It's going to be really difficult to try and survive. King to a2 was played, but now just comes rook to d8. Pragg puts the rook on the square that it was supposed to, but here just comes king to b3 trying to run away, but here just comes rook to b8 check, king to a2 and queen to d8 in this position. The queen and the rook are both infiltrating in this position. Queen to d5 asking for a trade, and yes, if you trade your position would crumble, so you don't want to trade. So queen to e8 was played, but now just comes this rook caps on g6. You're gonna have to give back the exchange to be able to survive in this position. H captures, and now just comes rook to b1. Is Pragg gonna be happy with the draw? I don't think so. He's going to be happy with the draw. So he's going to try and push and, just try and press even in this position. Here, rook to d8 was played, but now just comes even queen caps on f3. But now it comes this queen to e5, just targeting those pawns. Rook to d1, asking for a trade. Rook to b8, again, rook to b1, rook captures, king captures, and queen caps on c3 was played. And how is Pragg going to try anything here? First, queen to a8 check was played. Pragg goes for king to h7, queen caps on a7, and queen caps on c4. So both players now have a passer. Let's see. It's a race. Let's see who's going to win. Here, queen to d4, but now just comes queen to f1 check, king moves and queen caps on f2 with a check, king to b3 and queen caps on h2. So Pragg was able to win 2 pawns in a row. So now there's 2 against 4, but the cheap pawns are doubled. Can you actually try to win in this position? Well, Pragg is definitely going to press. Here, a4 was played, but now just comes queen to h1, and you need to be careful. It's a queen's endgame, but still, you cannot just go around flirting moves in this position to try and survive. The move that you were supposed to play in this position was actually queen to c4, just keeping everything intact, and after g5 just go for this queen caps on f7. And this is the idea. You win 1 pawn, and after queen to d1 check, king to a3, you're most likely going to go for a perpetual in this position, and the game would end in a draw. But after queen to h1, here a5 was played. a5 is not at all a good move, because normally in endgames and especially in pawn endgames you are taught to actually just push the pawn. You don't want to waste any tempos, but now in this position that idea does not work, because here g5, and if a6 g4 and a7 g3, and Pragg unfortunately is covering that square, so you cannot queen. But here queen to d3 check was played. Now g6, queen to d4, but the trouble is queen to d4 completely loses the game, and now here queen to b7 check by Pragg, king to c2, and even c5. Now trying to just deviate the queen, and now those pawns are going to be pushed. It's going to be very difficult trying to do anything. Maybe you could have survived with a move like, you could have won with this move like g2 as well, but it just gives a lot of advantage back, because here after queen to h4 check, you're going to have to deal with a lot of checks. And if f6, queen to d7 check, king to h8, and after queen to d1, if you try to go for queen to c6 check, and after this queen to b6 check, king moves forward, queen caps on e3, and now it's troublesome because the king would need to go back, and once you do queen caps on a7, it's 4 against none, and that's absolutely crazy. Queen to d8 check, king to g7, queen to d7 check, king to h6, queen to h3 check, king to g5, and even if you're able to capture this with a check, this position would still be winning. I have 3 pawns, you have absolutely nothing. But after king to c2, hey, c5 was played by Pragg, and now just comes queen to h4 check, king to g7, queen to a4, but now comes g2, and I'm promoting. So what are you going to do? Here queen to a1 check was played, but now just comes king to h7, and finally king to d3, but Pragg brings out another queen into the game with g1 queen. Queen captures was played, but after queen caps on a7, here in this position Nico Chasin resigned the game, because it's 3 against 1, and he knows that whatever endgame you want to try and play in this position, it's not going to work out, because, well, 3 pawns against none. Even if you're able to push it, my queen can block it. I have 2 pawns, and although it's endgames, queen endgames are complicated, it's not that complicated that Pragg cannot win 2 pawns up queen's endgame. I mean, that's really basic. But kudos to Pragg. He played an absolute perfect game till the point where he was completely winning right from the opening with that blunder, but then he played that knight to f3, and yeah, that was not at all good. He gave away the advantage, but he had to press in the queen's endgame, and he got a completely winning position, and he was able to convert. Kudos to Pragg for getting 3 out of 3 and a great start to the tournament. Let's see how he's able to perform in further rounds. So yeah, thank you all for watching. I'll be coming back with some of these amazing games, so stay tuned to the channel, stay updated, and I'll be seeing you guys very, very soon.